Monday, April 12th, 2021. I'd like to call to order the Laconia City Council meeting. Welcome, everyone. Prior to meeting, though, I'd like to read the introduction for electronic meetings, and let's hope we're getting a little closer to not having to do this anymore.
Hope so.
Hope so. As mayor of the Laconia City Council, due to the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis and in accordance with Governor Sununu Emergency Order Number 12 pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this board is authorized to meet electronically. Please note, there is no physical location to observe and listen to the meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the Governor's Emergency Order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, this is to confirm that we are, A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. Once again, we are utilizing the Zoom platform for this electronic meeting. All members have the ability to communicate during this meeting through the Zoom platform, and the public has access to watch the live YouTube video at www.youtube.com/LaconiaNH. Listen to this meeting through dialing the following phone number, 1-301-715-8592, or participate by the Zoom app. Webinar ID 894-7158-9603, password 613959. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of how to access the meeting using Zoom, and instructions are provided on the City of Laconia's website at www.laconianh.gov. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please call 527-1265, extension 243, or email at cityclerk@laconianh.gov. And D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, we will adjourn the meeting and have it rescheduled at that time. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's begin the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states his presence, also please state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. At this point, I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney? You're on mute, Counselor.
I'm in the council chamber.
Counselor Susie?
Home alone in this room.
Counselor Littman?
I'm home alone in this room.
Counselor Haynes? You're on mute.
Here at council chambers.
Counselor Hamel?
Home and alone.
Counselor Felch?
Home and alone.
Mayor Hosmer?
I am in the mayor's office in the City Hall complex. So we have a quorum. Before we go any farther, I would like to ask Councilor Littman if he would be so kind as to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the
The
flag
flag
Of the
United States of America,
and to the republic for which it
which
stands,
stands
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
God,
God, indivisible, with
liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Councilor Littman. Joining us this evening is the aforementioned Recording Secretary, City Clerk Cheryl Hebert. We also have City Manager Scott Myers with us, and I do believe that in the background, helping us with IT, is the City Finance Manager, Gwen Smith. Moving on to item number 7, which is the acceptance of minutes from previous meetings. Minutes. These are the minutes of the regular meeting minutes of March 22nd, 2021. Minutes of the meeting were distributed to the City Council on Wednesday, March 24th, 2021. With no corrections or changes submitted to the clerk, the minutes will be accepted as distributed. Item 7B, which is the special meeting minutes of March 24th, 2021. Minutes of the meeting were distributed to the City Council on Thursday, March 25th, 2021. With no corrections or changes submitted to the clerk, the minutes will be accepted as distributed. On number 8, which is the consent and action items. Under 8A is acceptance of an amendment to Laconia Highway Safety Grant 21-098 in the amount of $9,397.50. The Laconia Police Department had previously been awarded a highway safety grant in the amount of $18,250. This grant was included in the anticipated grant resolution adopted by the council on July 27th, 2020, Resolution 2020-07. On March 3rd, 2020, Laconia Police Department was informed that the original grant award had been amended to include $9,397.50 to include a radar display unit and a LiDAR unit. Per Resolution 2019-24, resolution relative to the acceptance and expenditure of unanticipated funds made available during the fiscal year per RSA 31:95-B in the amount of less than $10,000. Acceptance of this grant will require the reallocation of previously approved funds to provide for the 50% local match. The recommendation is that the council vote to accept $9,397.50 in additional highway safety fund grants. So right now, I'd be looking to for a motion to approve the acceptance of an amendment to the Laconia Highway Safety Grant 21-098 in the amount of $9,397.50. So made by Councilor Cheney, seconded by Councilor Susie. Is there any further discussion among the council? And I'm a little confused by this. I don't know if, go right ahead, Councilor Ham. I'll let you lead the way with a question.
Well, the question I had is, this is over and above the 18,000 that was received or is going to be received. And if it is the 9,300, where's the roughly $4,500 coming from for the 50% match?
So the original grant that we anticipated was the $18,250, and that was included with your budget documents when you adopted the budget, because again, we put known grants in there so that they become part of the budget process. So this was an amount above and beyond that. So that's why this is before you tonight. This is less than $10,000. So we could follow 3195B and do it through a consent item and have the minutes reflect that. And PD budget will come up with the match out of their operating funds and probably an equipment line item.
Okay, thank you.
So again, Scott, how much does the PD have to come up with on a matching?
It's a 50% local match, so it would be about $4,700.
Okay. Any further questions or discussions on this motion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes,
Counselor Haynes, you're muted.
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Moving on to item number 8B, which is a request to establish rental fees for Boardwalk and Weirs Boulevard vending spaces for Laconia Motorcycle Week 2021. Confirmation from the city council is requested to set the following rental fees for vendor spaces for Laconia Motorcycle Week 2020 as follows. A 10 by 12 boardwalk vending spaces, $1,500 each. 90-foot block of space for the Laconia Motorcycle Week Association, no charge. Weirs Boulevard, 6 10 by 12 spaces, $550 each, or one 12 foot by 75 foot space for $2,000. So right now, I'd be looking for a motion to move to approve rental fees for Laconia Motorcycle Week 2021 vending spaces located on the boardwalk and Weirs Boulevard as presented. So made by Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Cheney. Any further discussion? Councilor Susie.
Being my first time seeing this, a couple of questions. How many spaces do we have in each of these categories?
I'm going to do the quick math here. So I'm going to say 3, 6. I believe if you looked down the entrance to the pier, we have spaces on both sides. To the left, towards the marketplace and up towards the Methodist campground area, there are 5 spaces that are specific to food vendors because we have ability to run water there and also handle the gray water up in that area. So for most of the years, we've had 2 food vendors who have each taken 2 spaces and parked a food truck or tents or whatever and stuff there and have done the 2 spaces. And then we'd have a 5th spot that was the soda guy who came in with like a cabin looking thing and did the flavored sodas and the fancy steins and stuff. So those are 5 spaces to the left of the entrance to the boardwalk, to the pier, I'm sorry. And then to the right, right from that entranceway, the first 90 feet for the last, I'm going to guess 4, maybe 5 years, has it been a Motorcycle Week Association space when they moved their headquarters there that we don't charge for. Beyond there, we would normally have 10 additional spaces, I believe, is what we would have there in the past. This year, with the extra distancing required, we went on a seniority list, and we have 2 vendors who've been with us the longest, who actually each of them take up 3 spaces. So they're 3 contiguous spaces. So we have those 2 vendors with basically 3 spaces each coming in. And then we also have, according to our ordinance, have 1 spot there that we provide at no charge to the Laconia Kiwanis for their motorcycle raffle. Is it the Kiwanis? The Kiwanis, I'm sorry, the Kiwanis do water down there. The Rotary does the motorcycle raffle, and that's usually across the street on the veterans property.
Okay. Now, do we supply the electricity also? Is it like electrical hookups?
There's basic electricity, so they could run lights at night or run a credit card machine like they did in the old days. Most of the credit card machines now are run through people's phones with the little plug-in attachment type of thing. But yeah, just to put some lights on, because I think the vendors are allowed to go until maybe 9 or 10 o'clock at night.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Under 8B, that's 8B is now officially done. So moving right along on our agenda under number 9, which is the citizen comments for matters not on the agenda. If citizens have tuned in and there's an issue they'd like to bring before us tonight, and it's not on the agenda, now would be the appropriate time. And I'll wait for your cue, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Mayor, Gail Ober would like to address the council.
Yes. Welcome, Miss Ober.
How are you?
Superb. How are you?
I'm well, thank you all. You all look well. I wanted to say that tomorrow night, and I guess for undisclosed dates going forward, the Master Plan Steering Committee has recommenced, and I have talked to Councilor Cheney about this. And from my understanding, when this committee was set up, it has included 3 members of the city council, and that includes the mayor. At this point in time, I understand Councilor Cheney and Councilor Littman. I really encourage any of you that want to participate in this to participate in this, because we haven't had any city council input so far. And we are tasked with coming up with some critical zoning proposals that I'd like to see somebody from the city council participating at the ground level, so that we're sort of not spinning our wheels here on this committee. I'd like to see some buy-in from the city council. In front of us right now is relooking at our accessory dwelling unit things, ordinances, our urban density and zones, especially out towards Route in Ward 1, where Councilor Cheney is, to discuss how we're going to develop out there, where the future development of the city is going to go, how we can address infill and matters like that. And there is also some suggestions of discussions on infrastructure improvements and some zoning changes perhaps to the existing short-term rental ordinance, which has proven somewhat unwieldy as far as the zoning board, which I'm the vice chair of, has proved. We meet tomorrow night. We meet on Zoom. I believe the agenda should be posted under the Master Plan Steering Committee agendas. And again, I know Councilor Cheney has expressed an interest in this. If there's any of you really that want to participate, I really encourage you to do so. There are 6 of us so far, and we would really appreciate some input at your level. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor,
Thank you, Ms. Ober. Appreciate your dedication to the city of Laconia. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask Mrs. Ober?
Please do. Yes, Councilor Littman.
I am interested in participating. I did participate in the last time, and I just, for whatever reason, have not seen, and maybe I just missed it in my email, the announcements for the meetings. If someone could check to make sure I'm on the list there. I'd appreciate it.
Truthfully, I understood that the planning director was the one that was sending out agendas and notice of meeting. I honestly haven't gotten one either.
Okay.
I'd be glad to take on that responsibility.
No,
And I apologize if the people who are on this committee haven't been notified of it. I guess that we haven't clearly designated whose responsibility that is. So maybe some of the fault lies with us as well.
I think you're correct. Dean usually sent them out, and he may have, just for whatever reason, hasn't popped up. And
I admit I have not gotten one either, Councilor Littman. And
Nor have I.
And I know, like I said, I know Councilor Cheney is very interested in this. And I can't speak for you, Mr. Mayor. I know you're on it because the mayor has always been a named person on the committee. But I suppose if you don't have the time or you're not interested, you can certainly designate someone who was interested to act in your stead. I will send Dean an email tomorrow. I'll send him one right now and ask him if he's notified anyone. But the committee does meet tomorrow night. We are on Zoom. I don't believe that there's any in-house meeting or there's any place physically to meet. And it does start at 6:30. And again, I don't mind taking the responsibility of notifying you all. I did not realize you hadn't been notified.
it's possible, but I guess several of us have not seen it.
Okay.
Thank
Well,
you.
anyway, tomorrow night
Thank
at
you.
6:30, and you don't have to be a member of the committee, obviously, to participate. I think this is important, and I think you guys do too. So thank you.
Thanks again.
Have a good night.
Mr. Mayor, Charlie St. Clair would like to address the council.
Okay. Welcome, Mr. St. Clair. Glad you could join us.
Good evening. I'm not sure if I should have waited till matters on the agenda, but because it is involves Motorcycle Week, but it's not connected to what you've already talked about and the other item on the agenda, the rides. I just wanted, I'm sure everybody's been watching the news with regards to how many vaccines we're getting out there. I'm sure that they've seen the news about some spikes with different age groups and here and there, including in New Hampshire. But I just want to remind everybody, not that you don't know this, but Motorcycle Week actually starts 2 months from today. In 2 months these days, that's a lot of time, the way things are going, whatever direction they're going. But hopefully the number of people being vaccinated, not only in New Hampshire, and now that that's been opened up to anybody from anywhere in the country, maybe things will get even better. I just want to mention, and I know this has not been approved, but I want to just once again talk about outside entertainment tents, or as you refer to them as beer tents, some people. I just want to throw this idea out there, something to think about for the next 2 weeks. Hopefully this will be on the agenda in 2 weeks. But you could start with a reduced capacity in tents if they're approved. Right now, liquor enforcement and the fire department has a capacity number on tents, just like they do on inside establishments. And normally the owners of the tents will have a counter for the entrance and a counter for the exit, or if it's just one entrance exit, nonetheless, they're there with their counters checking those numbers. So let's say if somebody's allowed to have a capacity of 500 people, maybe the council would entertain the thought to have a capacity of 250 people, which would be only half the capacity and would make it so that people could spread out to do the social distancing. It would give the owners a chance to put up tables if everybody has to be seated. And again, it was something to work with. And if things get better, then the council could amend that. Or if things get worse, the council could say, geez, we tried, but you know what, the whole state's shutting down because we've gone into an emergency setting, God forbid, something like that. So that I just wanted to throw that out there. I think it's logical, reasonable, something to think about over the next 2 weeks. And I appreciate your time tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. St. Clair.
Mr. Mayor, Joyce Endy would like to address the council.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Ms. Endy, welcome. Looks like you're still on mute. If you can hear me,
Yes,
whoops, you're
can
off
you hear
mute
me?
now. We can hear
Can
you
you hear me?
now. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much for taking my call, Mayor Hosmer and councilors. I'm very interested in the Weirs Beach restoration project. I would like to know specifically if you would accept my fundraising monies for part of the project. I have spoken with Robert Ames, and he agrees with the idea. What we envision is the jetty, as you know, is going to extend about 25 feet out into the water. And we would like to put something on that. Like we would like to put a gazebo and a decorative lighthouse on there to create something monumental that everyone would be proud of. And I specifically mentioned to Robert that I would be very happy to be instrumental in the fundraising for that if and when the DES approves the restoration, and if and when you approve of the architectural plans that we would submit to you. The planning takes time, and that's why I'm asking you the question tonight. I wondered if the city would accept monies that I would be willing to raise for the purpose if you approve of it.
That's very generous of you to make that effort and make that offer. I
Thank you.
think that, yes, I think I'd have to defer to the city manager as to how we would go about accepting any monies raised.
Sure.
But certainly the idea of a lighthouse, I was thinking, I would like a real lighthouse there. I'm probably not looking to raise that much money, but I think a real
Well,
lighthouse would be really
That
something
was
down
my-
there.
Yes, that was my initial vision, was a real lighthouse. And I actually met with an architect about it briefly, believe it or not. And what could be done is you could have baseboard lighting. You could have some lighting in the top, like an actual lighthouse, but you could also have baseboard lighting so that any of the neighbors in the area who might object to the lighting, that could be worked out. But I would
sure.
love nothing better than to have a real lighthouse there, because as you know, we don't have a state-approved lighthouse on New Hampshire's biggest and most beautiful lake.
Yeah, very interesting. Never thought of it, but thank you very much for the offer. I'm sure there's a way that we can follow up with you.
Okay.
If you send some information along to the city council email
Okay.
address, and that way we've got contact information and we can put you in the mix as things develop there. How's that?
Okay. But
Thanks very much.
It sounds like you might be agreeable to accept monies that could be raised outside. It was recommended to me that I ask you this question because you don't always accept money. I wasn't sure of that.
Well, I don't know. It seems kind of funny, but I think we'll find a way to accept it, so long as the
Okay.
mission the reason that it's given is something that's something that's been approved and adopted and embraced by the community.
Okay.
Sure.
Who would I send my email to?
I would send it to the city manager, or
Okay.
and then he can.
Yes, and I believe he's in charge of getting approval from DES. That's what I had heard. So I will do that. And thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Yes, you're very welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Mr. Mayor, there are no other hands raised.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Moving right along to item number 10, under interviews. So tonight we have Brett Beliveau requesting appointment as a regular member of the Planning Board to fill the remainder of a term expiring at the end of June 2023. Mr. Beliveau is currently an alternate on the Planning Board, having served in that capacity for the past 3 years. He is applying to fill the remainder of a 3-year term created by the resignation of former Planning Board member Jewel Fox. Interviews of individuals applying for appointment or reappointment to various boards and commissions will be held at this meeting. Appointments will be made at the council's April 26th, 2021 meeting. Mr. Beliveau, if you're with us, it'd be great to have you introduce yourself. Let us know why you'd like to become a full member of the Planning Board.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
I hear you very well. Welcome. Glad you could join us.
All right, great. Good evening to everybody. So my name's Brett Beliveau, Ward number 5. I've been a resident of Laconia for almost 14 years now. Background, 21 years engineering in the military, retired, came back here. I work for a local firm that deals with permitting of construction aggregate sites in New England. And we also deal with acquisitions of construction aggregate sites across the United States. So I've been in the business for a while, building things, tearing things up, whatever you want to call it, making maps, doing all kinds of things like that. 3 years ago, kids are kind of on their own almost, and I was looking at a way to get involved a little more with the city. So I had applied for one of the alternate positions that was open on the planning board. Appeared before you guys almost 3 years ago now, and was accepted. And in those 3 years, I've been a regular member on there. I think in the 3 years, there have been maybe 2 or 3 meetings that I actually haven't been able to make and that I wasn't a seated voting member. So there's always a need for people there. Unfortunately, everybody has busy schedules. So the planning board relies on the alternate members a lot. And that got me a little bit more involved than I had initially thought that I would be. But I enjoyed it. I've enjoyed the last 3 years. It's kind of opened my eyes a little bit to the whole process of planning and development in the city of Laconia. And yeah, this opportunity came up. A full member seat is open. And so I was approached, since I'm the most senior alternate member. And I figured I've enjoyed it so far, so I might as well keep on serving the city if you guys will allow it.
Well, I'm certainly very pleased in your interest in this and your willingness to serve the city. I'll look to the council members here to see if there are any questions of you. Council Cheney? Go right
If I might, I don't have a question. I did want to comment that I've observed Brett at planning board meetings now for the last year, and he is a very active participant. His contributions, I think, have been above average, and I strongly support his request. Thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. Okay, seeing no other requests for questions or feedback, Mr. Beliveau, as you know, we'll be taking a vote on this on April 26th at our next meeting. And once again, certainly I think your reputation is well known in the community. And so thank you for your willingness to continue to serve. I know it's greatly appreciated.
All right, thank you.
Moving right along here to number 15. Here we are at the mayor's report. Just a couple of items. One thing that I think is very positive and exciting. The other thing I think, the other item I would like to just mention is probably presents a challenge for the city, and we've got our work cut out for us. But certainly in regards to the city's sale of the Buzzeel House, which was known as the Rectory for St. Joseph's Church, 30 Church Street. The closing took place last week, and for sort of the information, for the public information, I think most people know, but it's, I think, great to go over again. I think when we first looked at the acquiring the property of Holy Trinity School and the rectory, as well as the parking behind it, when we were attempting to figure out what the net price would be to the city, how much we would potentially bond, we were working with a number of about $700,000. The purchase price, as you remember, for the property was $1.13 million, which would have left us with a sale price on that property of 30 Church Street of about $400,000. We listed it for $450,000 shortly after purchasing the property. We sold the property, which is the rectory, for $480,000. So significantly above asking price, which I think is indicative of the market right now. That amount netted to the city $447,000, which was more than perhaps we anticipated. And we were the beneficiary of this. And right now, in regards to bonding the purchase of the school, we're looking to bond somewhere in the neighborhood of $683,000. So, I guess we've been very fortunate in that when we purchased this and that what we sold it for, what it's netted us, And the fact is, we're bonding a little less than we anticipated. So I think that's really great news, and certainly welcome to Mandy and Ian Hagan to the city of Laconia. I believe they will be great stewards of that historic property. The second item that I just wanted to mention, because I think we should all have it on our top of mind, certainly, and certainly be attuned to what's going on. And what we saw, I think, as many of you probably know, the House, New Hampshire House, passed the budget last week, which is HB1 and HB2, the trailer bill. That was passed on, I guess it was Thursday. They had a 3-day session. It has now been delivered to the Senate. I think, unfortunately, in the House bill and the House budget, there's a $41 million reduction in municipal aid and revenue sharing. And I think that is certainly something that we took a stand on. We sent the letter out indicating that it was a high priority for us, that if we reduction in municipal aid and revenue sharing really puts an intense amount of pressure on budgeting in a municipality, and indirectly, certainly, on property taxpayers. So I'm disappointed, certainly, in that reduction. Thankfully, we were not in a position to lose out on state aid grants, really, to such an extent that some other communities have already committed money towards, and now they won't be reimbursed. But certainly, I think the issue here is that what are the priorities of the people who are serving in our delegation? I certainly hope that it will be the taxpayers of the city of Laconia, and certainly when the Senate finishes with this budget and sends it back for a committee of conference, I certainly hope there's an opportunity to have a budget that restores local funding and assists the taxpayers here in the city. So something for all of us to be aware of and to keep our eye on, and certainly renew our efforts and encourage the Senate Finance Committee to take a closer look at local aid and how important it has become, and why we'd like to have it returned to fulfilling statutory requirements. But those are the only two issues I have this evening right now. I'm happy to turn it over to the council right now for council comments. Councilor Felch.
Yes, I just wanted to touch on Motorcycle Week because I've heard from a lot of my constituents and other constituents in the city, and 95% of them want to have a normal motorcycle week. All the festivals and craft fairs, and I'm seeing lists of them that have all been approved and going out. I hope we plan on having this on the agenda for our next meeting so we can discuss other things. We've got the parking, we've got the one-way roads and that type of stuff that needs to be talked about. The bike shows, we haven't talked about that. I know the city even has one, I believe, at Opeechee Park. So there's a lot of stuff that I'd like to see discussed at our next meeting as far as Motorcycle Week, and hope the rest of the council will reach out to the constituents and hear what they have to say, because that's who we're supposed to be representing.
Thank you, Councilor Felch. Councilor Hamel.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to bring up to Scott, and maybe you could check into it, Scott. Lafayette Street, all the sub lawns are all full of mud, driven over, and need to be fixed and reseeded, probably staked so that people don't drive on them. I've always said in the past that sub lawns are a pain, and but we seem to continue to do them. So we need to go out there and fix them. And I was wondering if you could get some kind of date on that for me, Scott. I had a few people call me.
I will look into it.
Okay. And just to kind of bring up with what Tony said, there is a thing on tonight's agenda about all the rides that are going to be happening. And the thing for the Mackers ride and the light parade and all those things are on tonight's agenda. And I believe that, if I'm wrong, Scott can correct me, but I think at our last meeting, we approved basically everything other than 50% vendors. Everything is going to be the same as what our regular motorcycle week was. Was that true or not, Scott?
We were allowing sites to have roughly 50% capacity of their vendors as long as they could distance. But we were not going to license any beer tents or any additional outdoor stage loudspeakers other than what exists already for existing bricks and mortar.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as the one-way street and you know, the parking only on Lake Street for the motorcycles and on that, we discussed that at the last meeting, correct?
No, we focused on the vendors, and so we get that information out. And I think feeling was from staff that, you know, setting up the traffic pattern is something that's real simple and in-house and could be a decision for a later time. So we have not landed anything firmly yet on the traffic pattern and centerline parking yet, but we certainly can put it on the next agenda and have that discussion.
Okay, and I'd suggest doing that along with what Tony said.
Any other councilors want to speak for a first time? Councilor Susie. And you're on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Scott, can we get an update on, maybe not today, but next time around, on the Ironman? Okay, I mean, how they doing on their registration or their approvals from the different localities they wanted to use for their races and stuff, and just get an overall update of how things are progressing.
Yeah, I can give you a couple of high points right now very quickly. We received that initial contract from the corporate headquarters that we have responded to with some comments and some language that we would like amended. So we've gotten that back to them. I believe it was last Tuesday. So the ball's in their court with their attorneys to bring us back an amended contract for our legal to look at again. I believe I received an email over the weekend or maybe on Friday from Audra, who indicated that she was going to have her special events committee application completed hopefully over the weekend and submitted into planning in the early part of this week, because that's really where we're able to bring all departments together and get the key players around one table in one room and hammer it out as a group rather than Ironman, Timberman having to go to each department and try to figure out how to do it on their own. So I've not heard that it was submitted today, but I think it was expected to hopefully be early this week. We have let them know that we're already at just about mid-April right now, and this is an event that's going off in a matter of 4 months from now, and a little over 4 months, I guess. And since it is a first-time event for us in the city, it's certainly new to everybody, and we need to get on this sooner rather than later for logistics of how we're going to handle traffic and parking and spectators and staging of bicycles and all of that stuff.
Thank you. And one last question, if I may, is do you know if the Pumpkin Fest is also being planned for this year?
They're having conversations. I don't have an official answer at this point. I can certainly reach out to the chamber. I know that I've heard anecdotally that some of the amusement rides and the kiddie rides and those types of things, that some of those businesses either are no longer operating or maybe are challenging to get. And I think there was some concern about being able to secure one of those vendors with those types of activities for that. But I've heard that just kind of through the grapevine, so I can certainly follow up and try to firm that up with you.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Cheney.
Thank you. Having observed the body language of Councilor Felch's cat, I think it's appropriate to ask, is there a chance you could poll the council to see if we and the necessary staff have all had our shots and perhaps could get together for in-person meetings sooner rather than later? I know the cat would prefer it, and there are others who I suspect would like to be in the same room. Thank you.
Want to offer up any names, Counselor?
I'm sorry?
Want to offer up any names of who would like to be in the room? No?
No,
Okay,
thank you, sir.
okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, absolutely. Counselor Littman, thank you.
I hate to be the skunk at the garden party kind of thing here, but, you know, New Hampshire has moved up to being the 7th highest rate of infection, higher than any of our neighboring states. We have seen over 100% increase in cases in Belknap County over the last 14 days. We've been at levels where we would move to remote back in November. And so I guess in as much as vaccination is an important part of the solution, it's not the ultimate solution, neither towards in-person council meetings nor determining what we should do motorcycle week. I do agree that we have some time to see how this plays out, but I think we're not in the place where we'd like to be in terms of having concentrated groups of people together.
Thank you, Counselor Littman. Counselor Cheney, go right ahead. You're on mute. You're on mute still.
Please believe me, Henry, that I mean no personal unkindness. I think it was Mark Twain who said there are lies, damn lies, and statistics. And I worry that we start to take statistics like the increases in Belknap County and whatever to go beyond. I'm asking, are we, this group of people, vaccinated? And if we are, that doesn't mean we can't still have the public portion of it be Zoomed, but the council members themselves could get together in a room if we've all, as I suspect, if we've all been vaccinated. So I appreciate what you're saying, Henry. I understand it, but I also arrive at some point along the way at the point where I start to think, you know, we were a lot worse off this time last year, and we've gotten here without the Armageddon that was predicted, and I just think we ought to at least ask the question to see if everybody's had their shots, and if they have, we can discuss it at the next meeting and see how the group feels about starting to get together. Thank you, Mayor.
Counselor Susie, go right ahead.
Along with what Councilor Cheney and Councilor Littman stated, I've had my shots. I've had my additional 2 weeks of, staying relatively quarantined, and I would be in favor of, it's a councilor's option if he wants to participate in a meeting at City Hall and our regular meeting times to go do, and I would. Thank you.
Any other counselor comments? Counselor Haynes, go right ahead. And you're still on mute.
Thank you. I'm just concerned, Scott, have you had a chance to find out, are they done on Court Street near the Durkee Brook Bridge?
I have not connected with Public Works on that with Christus since you and I met out there on Friday, so that's on my list to do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no further requests for comments from the counselors. Committee reports. Do you have any committee reports this evening? How about liaison reports? Is that a hand raised? Liaison reports. Counselor Haynes, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just very quickly, Mr. Mayor. In the Daily Sun, there was a comment that was made about the particular building on Lakeside Avenue. The last Heritage Commission meeting, it was reported that there was some interest in saving the house. And there was a $10,000 offer to help someone. There's been, as I said, there's been a lot of interest, but at this point in time, the cost of moving the particular structure was over $100,000, and the house still stands, and they're just waiting for the owners to see if it can be accomplished to move it. So just so that that's out there so people know. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor Haynes. Counselor Cheney.
Thank you. The planning board had some discussion at their last meeting about waivers for sidewalks. And there've been a number of requests coming in lately for requests to waive sidewalks. The requirement that in your site plan, you agree to build a sidewalk in front of your new home or rebuilt home. The reason I bring it up is because the comment that one or more of the members of the planning board made was that this is something that ought to be referred back to the city council for discussion and decision about about a definition of why waivers should be granted or can be granted, or even if waivers should be granted. So I just want to point out that we may be getting a request from the planning board in the not too distant future to review and make some determination about the portion of the ordinance that deals with sidewalks on private property. Thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other liaison reports? Counselor Hamel.
Yes, I wouldn't feel right if I didn't talk about the Colonial.
Neither would we.
Can see the thanks. As everybody can see, the new marquee is up, and it's all hooked up and it is running. We've darkened it now so that we can have a lighting ceremony, and I will be getting with together with the city, probably Scott and the steering committee and Spectacle about seeing what we could do to make a festive activity of that, of the lighting of the sign. So it's really remarkable to see that go up. It really cleans up the front of the building. The new lamp posts are up now, and it's really turning into really something magnificent. So other than that, we do have a slight glitch with the stage that we have to repair. It's a little uneven, and liability wise, we have to address that. And some furniture and probably shades in the Canal Street side of the building. So probably at the next meeting or so, I will be coming to the city council and requesting some funds to do that. Unfortunately, the stage is not in the budget to do that repair. But the gist of the thing, for a $14 million project to come to the city council for a small amount of money to repair the stage, which actually needs to be done before we can open. I think the management of the funds and the building has been done very well, and pretty much everything else has been all done with the funds we have there. So I will be looking to speak to you in another couple weeks about that. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Hamel. Okay, moving right along, number 19. This is citizens' request to comment on current agenda items. If there's an item on tonight's agenda and you'd like to discuss it, now would be the appropriate time.
Mr. Mayor, and a attendee identified as McUser has raised their hand.
Okay. Hello, Mac user. If you could introduce yourself, tell us where you're calling from.
Hi, Jose DeMattos, 1192, 1198 Wears Boulevard. How are you all this evening?
Welcome.
Thank you. I'd like to speak quickly to the feasibility of the converting the manual to automated solid waste curbside collection service. I urge the council and the city to please negotiate and extend the current contract with Casella for 2 more years to September 20th, 2023. Only 2 firms have submitted bids for automatic service. Casella was the low bidder. The review shows the city will not generate any savings to pay for containers that would be needed. The lack of savings due to many reasons, including the amortization of new trucks. The need is continuous for manual collection at parks and streetscapes, and the need is continuous for manual collection of many of our city streets. As we know, costs of everything continue to increase, and we all can attest to that. City trash and recycling is a taxpayer need that must be met by the city through collection and payment of such through our taxes. Lord knows the tax base here in our city continues to increase with all the new construction, and that tax revenue should be used to continue to provide solid waste and recycling collection benefit. It does not make economic sense to spend $750,000 on new cots for solid waste and another $650,000 for recycling containers, taking out 7-year loans to do so. In extending Casella's contract, a 4% increase really is nominal. Converting to an automated system to slow the growth of solid waste costs will not occur, as solid waste will continue to be generated and the associated costs remain. Some options considered for reducing the service should not be considered. All taxpayers expect and deserve to have their waste collected as part of their large tax bills. Condominiums and apartments that have always had their waste collected should continue to have that. During the Weirs Beach area's secession attempt in the early 90s, besides having the fire department coverage in the Weirs, was also for the city of Laconia to fill the need of the Weirs Beach area influx of summer residents and tourists, and added the second day of service in a week, and that needs to continue. Fees should not be instituted. Our taxes have and always should continue to pay for solid waste. As always, I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. D'Amatos.
Mr. Mayor, Charlie St. Clair has raised his hand.
2 bites at the apple tonight, Mr. St. Clair.
Different agenda items, though. And I just want to quickly say I couldn't agree more with the last speaker. He's right on the mark on everything he said. And I hope that before any decisions are made by the entire council, this matter is sent to committee so the public will have a chance to address their concerns with that committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor, no other attendees have raised their hand.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Going along to item number 20, the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So before I get to the financial and operational trends report, I want to let the mayor and council and the public know that I will be presenting the fiscal year 2022 budget 2 weeks from tonight. So it's one of those must-see TV things I hope for, and fancy PowerPoint presentations, if I can figure out how to share my screen and all that good stuff. So 2 weeks from tonight, we've got a pretty good handle on it at this point. There's still a few areas that, as we do every 2 years when the state is working on its budget, as the mayor already alluded to tonight, we'll have to wait and see on some of the revenue streams coming out of the state. We were able to view a good recording that the Government Finance Officers Association put on with New Hampshire House Ways and Means on trying to get some clarification on the American Rescue Act, which was passed several weeks back, of what municipalities and counties and even the state can and cannot do with the funds that are allocated. And one of the big questions obviously deals with backfilling lost revenue or revenue shortfalls that have come about because of the COVID. So not only through the GFOA, but through our New Hampshire Municipal Association and other organizations, everybody is actively awaiting some additional clarification out of U.S. Treasury. My understanding is from when the bill was signed, they have 60 days in which to provide that clarification. So I know there's probably a lot of late nights going on in Washington as well. So the budget in 2 weeks. Moving on now to the financial and operational trends report. At the very top, you can see our building permit values, the new assessment that has come online from building permits that have been pulled from the most recent April 1st till assessing year ending March 31st. So these numbers are hot off the press, and we will have just closed out the assessing year. You can see the value in building permits pulled minus any demolition came in at $39 million this year, which is more than double where we were last year, and even the year before. You can see we were at 15 million. So a nice bump. It is across a couple of large projects, but not all the large projects that have been announced or even in some of the preliminary stages have pulled permits yet. So I think we'll expect this trend to continue once we kick over into the new year here in April. It has been a mix of additions, of some condominium projects, of some new single family homes, some in the higher price points, some in more of the starter home price point. So it has really been a mix, but very positive to see this level of activity in our city. So 39 million is one component of our tax cap, the value of that assessment coming online. And then, as we already know, the inflation number, the CPIU number, came in at 1.2%. So those are the components there. Looking at the fire and rescue call, again, some of these things we start to put in perspective a little bit when you look at this data, and later on with police and also in the EMS. And if you think back to March of last year, about halfway through the month, that's when the world changed and a lot of things shut down quickly, starting with what was intended to be, schools closing for 3 weeks, where the governor was on a phone call with the superintendents of school on or about March 14th or 15th, and basically said, 3 weeks we're shutting down, and let's figure out a plan going forward. And from then, a lot of businesses followed and municipal offices. So when you kind of look at the comparisons from the calls, in our world and how we're looking at it, March is kind of that starting point of halfway through the month. The world kind of changed. So just kind of keep that in mind as we go through, the report tonight. But more importantly, when you compare, maybe what April of this year looks like versus April of last year and that type of stuff. So fire calls, you can see, for this March, and then compared to the prior March, relatively on track to that. Public assistance data, as we've mentioned before, there's been a number of programs made available to help folks with utilities and rental assistance and staying evictions and that type of stuff. So at this point, we continue to see lower numbers of requests coming in for services through our welfare department. Turning the page to the police activity, this is a perfect example of, last year, 1,600 calls for service, including motor vehicle stops and other types of things, and this year up to 2,400. So again, as things started to slowly turn back, to a little bit more normal, some of our operations are seeing some increases in those numbers. Property tax collection down in the middle of the page, you can look for this year, and again, going all the way back to 2014 listed there. We are at the highest collection point for our property taxes at just short of 99%. And at the bottom of the page, again, you can see that as being 3/4 of the way through the year, and 75% is a target for our motor vehicle registration collection. We're at over 78%. And in terms of actual dollars, we're just about $200,000 ahead this year than we were of last year's pace. Turning the page, and I hope to see a big smile on Councillor Cheney's face at this point. This is the new, improved, revamped, much larger font, trying to make more apples and apples. Councillor Cheney, if you love it, I'll say you're welcome. If you hate it, I'll have a talking with Glenn after the meeting tonight. But no, Glenn put this together. We tried to true up some of the categories where we could put a little bigger font, and we're welcome to your feedback on the overtime page. Again, this is not that we don't have all the numbers and the tracking and the backup on this, but this is a challenging year in terms of overtime and how different departments track it, whether it's for shift coverage or if it's for detail. So for instance, for the number of police detail hours up at the Doobie building, which have been significant since that opened last April or May or whenever it was. Those are details, and even though they're paid out as overtime, they don't show up on the overtime report. That's how it's always been tracked. It's not replacing someone on duty. So the dollars that you see that are paid in overtime here, I can assure you that there's significantly more that show up in our accounting. And again, a lot of these are refundable. I mean, certainly in the terms of the police detail with the state, we've had some of the CARES Act money. We've had some of the FEMA money, the different silos as we've referred to on them. So a lot of tracking. This just being such a unique year, we would really be inundating you with just columns and columns of trying to break everything out. But it hopefully on an ongoing basis, on a non-COVID time, this is a little bit of a cleaner report and again, easier for you to all view, and we welcome your feedback on that. If you turn to the next page, we look at the facilities use requests. Again, just trending the whole year. When you look back at other years, you can see just the request to use city facilities significantly down. And again, that's 12 months basically of dealing with COVID. Impact fees at the bottom, collectively, we have about $124,000 across various department accounts. Again, it's my understanding the school is already targeted to use a good portion of their funds with a project this spring at some point before we wrap up this fiscal year. On the top of page 5 of the report, I believe all those numbers are true with the exception of the non-capital reserve account. We're still waiting for some final tallies coming in on some items that you've approved, like the fire station renovations in the Weirs and a few other purchases that were approved late last year for the PD that haven't been subtracted. So I think the only number that's not true there would be the non-capital reserve. By the time we square that up on closing out some projects, will be significantly less than the $475,000 balance that's shown there. Boat taxes rolling in continue to be strong. You can see where we're ahead of last year's pace, and last year significantly ran ahead of any of the other years that we have listed there. EMS billing for the current year and the prior year. Again, it kind of is what it is, where when COVID hit, we had a significant decrease if you compare the number of billable responses that we really had starting in last March, April, May. They were all well down into the 200s, where normal trend for us would be having, on most months, over 300 billable trips. So we're seeing that trend back up a little bit, but collectively, on average, over the past year with COVID, we are down, probably around 30 billable trips a month times 12 months in the year. So 360 billable trips in rough numbers is what did not occur this year. And I think, again, we can make that directly COVID related. A very positive thing to look at least from my perspective, the Public Works storm cost summary. We only had one event to list there for the entire month of March. And the police chief, after consultation with the Public Works director and the city manager, has already announced that as of this Friday, the winter parking ban is going to be lifted. So Chief Canfield is turning into a meteorologist and hoping and praying that there's no snow. Little Mother's Day surprise or something happens between now and I guess it wouldn't be Mother's Day, but some surprise between now and the end of April. But he's already gone out on a limb and announced that we will be lifting the winter parking ban 2 weeks early as of this Friday. Looking at the balances in the winter maintenance accounts, we did run a little bit heavier in overtime than the amount that we allocated. We're not over in the Public Works overtime budget, but obviously there's some overtime that occurs 12 months a year, and we allocate a certain portion of that overtime towards the winter. So we're just slightly over on that and under on our other storm costs, including our outside contractors. So I will be happy to take any questions anybody has tonight.
Councilor Cheney.
First, I'd like to thank the manager for the increased font, and it looks good. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that. I was going to ask, is there a chance that under the police and fire monthly activity highlights, if next month and for the balance of the year, you could add 1 or 2 more years? There seems to be space, but comparing this year to last year is sort of not it's an anomaly. Last year was an anomaly. And I'd like to see 19, and if we can squeeze in 18, to get some idea of what a normal year should look like versus what we have this year and going forward. If that's not possible, I'm fine. But if it could be worked out, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. So I think for the fire and rescue data, we do carry 4 years, 18, 19, 20, and 21. And for the police, where we break down the total year to date and the percent increase, we've got some room to tighten that up. So we can certainly reformat the police department activity one to give you a little bit more of a benchmark.
Seeing no other requests, Scott, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So moving along right now to new business under 21A, which is a request by Cure Spinal Muscular Atrophy, SMA. Cure SMA has requested the use of O-Pee-Chee Park, middle school parking lot, portion of the WOW Trail, Saturday, August 7th, 2021, from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. for the Cure SMA Hike / Walk for a Cure fundraising event. Cure SMA is the benefactor of the event. The City Council approval is being requested because this event is anticipating revenues above $2,000. So right now, staff recommendation is that this request be approved. The Parks and Recreation Commission has approved this request conditioned upon further approval from the City Council. This event has been an annual event for several years. So the caveat I would like to include on this item is that we are, as we just had a discussion, we're still in hopefully the latter stages of a pandemic, but it is still unclear when this pandemic will conclude. And in the meantime, what it will look like as far as directives from the state as to the number of people able to gather in one place and to conduct these types of activities. So I would suggest that any motion tonight have a contingency that is based on the orders coming out of the Department of Public Health or out of the state government about social distancing. That makes sense. If not, I'm happy to repeat it. So the proposed motion I'd be looking for is a move to approve the use of O-Pee-Chee Park Middle School parking lot and a portion of the WOW Trail on Saturday, August 7th, 2021, from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. for the Cure SMA Hike Walk for a fundraising event. So made by Councilor Felch. Thank you. Is there a second?
Subject to the public health matters that you identified?
Yes, absolutely. Would be willing to second at that? Yeah.
Yes.
Councilor Littman. So Councilor Littman will be second. And this is subject to the public health directives coming from the state. Is there further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch. You're muted.
Yes.
Thank you.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Madam Clerk, do you have the language? The
I do,
contingency, but is that okay? All right, good. Number 21B is a temporary traffic order 2021-02, the Laconia High School Homecoming Parade. A request for a temporary traffic order for the Laconia High School Homecoming Parade from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. on May 28th, 2021. So we'll be looking for a motion to move to approve temporary traffic order 2021-02, Laconia High School Homecoming Parade to be held on May 28th, 2021 from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. and contingent on the directives from the state in regards to the pandemic. So made by Councilor Hamel, seconded by Councilor Felch. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
yes,
Counselor Littman,
yes,
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
That's 6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Moving along to 21C, which is authorization of Flightcraft General to act as a boat agent for the city of Laconia. The boat dealer listed is requesting to operate as an agent of the city of for the city in the collection of boat fees. For the last several years, the state is requiring these dealers to show evidence of a surety bond in order to authorize them to collect fees for the city and state. The city can cover these dealers under our current bonding insurance at no additional cost, provided they are authorized annually by the city council to act as agents. In the fiscal year 2020, the city received approximately $94,000 in boat registration fees collected between these dealers and the city clerk's office. Adding Flightcraft to our list of boat agents will increase these fees. Staff recommendation is the city clerk is asking the council to authorize the following boat dealer to act as an agent of the city, Flightcraft General. You're looking for two motions, a move to allow Flightcraft General to act as a boat agent for the city of Laconia. So made by Councilor Felch and seconded by Councilor Hamel. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
yes,
Counselor Littman,
yes,
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
That's 6 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. And the second motion is we're looking for a motion to move to allow the city clerk to sign the boat agent agreement on behalf of the city of Laconia. So made by Councilor Felch and seconded by Councilor Haynes. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
yes,
Counselor Littman,
yes,
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
That's 6 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. Moving along to item number 21D, which is a request to designate the odd numbered side of Academy Street a no parking area from Court Street to the northern leg of Academy Square. Council members Hamel and Haynes requested that the odd numbered side of Academy Street from Court Street to the northern leg of Academy Square be designated a no parking area. The east side of Academy Street is already designated a no parking area from Court Street to Hoyt Court. Drivers, when they park their cars in this area on the odd side of the street, can block traffic from safely entering Academy Street, where there is traffic backed up at the stop sign on Academy Street. The estimated cost of designating this area no parking is $200 for the required no parking signs. The cost will come out of the Public Works sign budget. The Director of Public Works, Wes Anderson, is recommending the City Council approve designating the odd number side of Academy Street, no parking, from Court Street to the northern leg of Academy Square. The motion would be looking for is a move to approve designating the odd number side of Academy Street, no parking, from Court Street to the northern leg of Academy Square. I feel like I've read that 10 times already. So made by Councilor Haynes, seconded by Councilor Hamel. Further discussion on this issue? Councilor Felch.
Yes. I noticed on here it mentions the east side of Academy Street is already designated no parking. I drive up and down the street 5 days a week. There's no signage. There's nothing stating that it's designated no parking. I also have never seen a problem at the corner, but I do understand there could be. So I don't know where this no parking on the east side comes from.
Counselor Hamel.
Yes, on the court side, Councilor Phelps, that's already designated as no parking according to the city. And there is no signs there, which I asked Wes to take care of that problem. The parking on the opposite side of the street is a big problem. Lots of vehicles parked there on the side where the cafe is to go to the courthouse, to go different places. And they park near the intersection. So a vehicle turning, if they're going up Court Street, turning onto Academy, and there's a vehicle already at the stop sign, they can't get by. So it just backs everything up and is very dangerous in that area. So that's why it was brought up.
Yeah, I said I've never seen a problem, but I could see how it could be, so.
Yeah, it's a problem.
Well, maybe we should say the left and the right leg should be signed as no parking.
Yeah, both sides, if we agree to this tonight, then both sides of the street right in through there will be no parking. The side, like I said, the side of the courthouse is already no parking according to the city's rules, but the other side is not. So signs just need to be added on the other side too. And Wes was going to look into that.
So should that be viewed as a friendly amendment to this, or is it just, or is that just not necessary, Scott?
I wouldn't say it's necessary if it's already in the books.
It's already on our books. If I don't know firsthand whether the signs there or not, but if there are no signs there, when we're putting out the signs, if you approve this other part tonight, we'll certainly make sure the opposite side gets signed as well.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman. I'll come back to him. Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch,
Yes.
and Counselor Littman.
With Counselor Littman stepping away, that's 5 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. Moving along to item number 21E.
Oops, there he is.
Which is a resolution 2021-05 relative to a proposed land swap and boundary line adjustment between Antaeus Holdings Limited and the city of Laconia. Scott, this has got a little depth to it. Would you mind briefing us on this?
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor. And I know Stephen Smith is on the call if we need him, but I think it's relatively straightforward. So this deals with the property that Scott Everett is developing under his corporate name, Antaeus Holdings, in Lakeport on one side of Railroad Ave and on Elm Street. And basically, if you go and you look 3 pages into your background on this, you'll see the letter from Stephen Smith that's requesting that basically we do a land swap, and it's an equal land swap. And I'm skimming the number, but I want to say it's roughly in the area of about 600 square feet. If you turn to the map, which is the 4th page in your packet, you'll see that what we're trying to do is just square up or true up the line so that the sidewalk remains on city property and the parking remains on city property. It doesn't wander over where you've got part of it on private property. So if you look at the little hashtag darker colored wedges and square in one case, basically area A and area C, which are on either end there, would be coming to the city in exchange for area B. And from a staff perspective of just having this neatened up so that public parking and public sidewalks remain on city property makes a lot of sense. But in order to do this, we need to follow our ordinance, which is basically declaring a portion of this tax map lot as surplus so that we can do the swap. So no money is changing hands. It benefits, I think, both parties very much. And Your first step tonight is just to move this to a waive a first reading, move it to a public hearing, schedule the public hearing for 2 weeks from tonight, so that if anybody wanted to chime in to say why we shouldn't do this land swap before, in essence, we disposed of some city property, they would have the ability to do so.
Thank you very much, Mr. Myers. So, like to propose a motion, which is the first one is a move to waive the reading of Resolution 2021-5 in its entirety and to read by title only. So made by Councilor Cheney, seconded by Councilor Haynes. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. The second motion I'd be looking for is a move a first reading of Resolution 2021-5 relative to the proposed boundary line adjustment and land swap between Antaeus Holdings Limited and the city of Laconia. So made by Councilor Hamel, seconded by Councilor Susie. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. And finally, we're looking for a motion to move to schedule a public hearing on April 26, 2021, during the regular city council meeting regarding Resolution 2021-5 relative to the proposed boundary line adjustment and land swap between Antaeus Holdings Limited and the city of Laconia, and declaration of a portion of the city's property at tax map 367-189-24 as surplus. So made by Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Haynes. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. All 3 of the motions pass. Anyway, thank you very much for your patience, councilors. We're on to 21F. And this is a request from the Laconia Motorcycle Week Association for approval of organized rides in connection with the 2021 Laconia Motorcycle Week. The Motorcycle Week Association has requested approval of the following organized daily rides during this year's Motorcycle Week. The rides shown below are scheduled to leave from Lakeside Avenue in front of the rally headquarters booth at 10:30 a.m. with space designated in that area by the use of cones and rope. All rides will head out from that location via Scenic Road / Watson Road. So the rides are, for the record, Sunday, June 13th, 2021, the United States Classic Racing Association Vintage Race Tour to New Hampshire Motorcycle Speedway. Monday, June 14th, 2021, the Mae West Memorial Ride for Pets to New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Tuesday, June 15th, 2021, Bentley Saloon Ride to Arundel, Maine. Wednesday, June 16th, 2021, the Covered Bridge Ride. Approval is also being requested for the following 2 rides. The Peter Mackers Memorial Ride on Saturday, June 12th, 2021. This ride leaves the Nassau Resort on Weirs Boulevard at 11 a.m. and is escorted by the New Hampshire State Police. The New Hampshire Lights Parade on Friday, June 18th, 2021, leaving the City Hall parking lot on Beacon Street East at 9 p.m. and traveling to Lakeside Avenue. No fiscal impact associated with these rides. So right now I'll be looking for a motion to move to approve the request from Laconia Motorcycle Week Association to approve the organized rides during the 2021 Laconia Motorcycle Week as listed above, and contingent on the directives from the state in regards to the pandemic. And the reason I add that in is because it certainly looks like these rides, might be packed together. If the state may have something to say about social distancing and capacity in various places. Anyway, I would just ask that to be included, I think. A motion so made by Councilor Hamel, seconded by Councilor Felch. Any further discussion? Councilor Felch.
Just made me wonder about the hill climb on Tower Hill, probably for discussion at our next meeting as well.
Any other discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. Thank you very much. I should have asked a question about the May West Memorial Ride for pets. Hopefully the pets aren't driving the motorcycles, are they? Or are they just riding along, or is it just in honor of them? But
And is May West going to be here?
couple of questions. We missed the opportunity to have that
There you go.
discussion, Counselor. Okay, we're moving on now. So let's move along to number 21G, which is reallocation of funds assigned to the Laconia School District Education Stabilization Reserve, City Funds Expendable Trust Account. I'll look to you, City Manager, if you'd like to cover this or have Mr. Smith cover it.
I can take the lead on this for you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
So several years back, for those of you who are on the council, probably going back to 2017, I believe, there was a good working group between school board members and counselors, and ultimately by the city council to help support what was then a 5-year teacher contract. Earlier in that decade, through the serious downturn in the economy, there were many steps that were missed by teachers, and it was felt that our starting pay or pay for experienced teachers lagged from our neighboring communities, and that we were seeing high turnover because of several years of missed steps. So the school board took the initiative to try to do a 5-year contract for the teachers, involving a couple of years, I believe, where there were double steps to help get them caught up to where we were competitive in the region, and therefore we wouldn't be, churning teachers at a greater pace than we normally would. In order to do that, there's obviously a financial impact, and the school board was concerned that if it was a particular year that the tax cap did not allow enough growth or other revenues weren't available to them, that they might need some assistance from the city to help support that. So along the way, not only did the school department return some excess funds into reserve accounts rather than letting them lapse into the general fund balance, the city also committed to put some dollars aside should they be needed. And we did so to the tune of $300,000 back in June of 2019. So at this point, this coming July 1 is the 5th and final year of the teacher contract. The school department still has money sitting in reserves. They are not even requesting, I believe at this point, to be utilizing those reserves towards funding the teacher contract for this year. The plan always was they would use their funds first before coming to the city asking to use the money that we earmarked. So at this point, the request is to utilize those funds, take them out of what was called the Education Stabilization Reserve Account for city funds, and repurpose them. 2 items that I'm not going to be able to fund in this year's budget, but I think are worthy of supporting. We would like to fund immediately just because of timing. So one is the first phase of our downtown tree replacement program. Some of you have noticed that we've had some dying trees or oversized trees that we pulled out and removed, and we're maybe looking to reposition a few trees into better locations. So we'd like to start that phase 1 with $56,000 that I'm not going to be able to fund through the budget, but it would make sense to try and get this work jump started now so that we've got the advantage of better tree selection in the nursery this time of year, trying to plant not in the heat of the summer, which we would be doing if this money were in the budget and approved sometime in July. The second one is there's some equipment there, turf maintenance equipment, mowers, and different types of things that, again, for the same reason, it would make sense to procure those now and have the benefit of that equipment for use all season rather than going out to bid and getting equipment showing up maybe in August or September when we're coming down to the tail end of the season. So 56,000 for the downtown tree replacement, 20,000 towards turf maintenance type of equipment, and then the remaining approximately $229,043 from that balance would move into the non-capital reserve account for future project needs of the city, some of which I will be recommending that we utilize within conjunction of the budget presentation and the budget adoption. It's just those projects weren't as time sensitive, we felt, as the two that we've outlined tonight. So that's why we've tried to jumpstart those two and move them forward.
Thank you. Mr. Myers, are there any questions of the city manager before we move along to motions? Councilor
Yes.
Susie, go right ahead.
Yeah, Scott, just one question on the trees. I see you're taking out 33 and 15 are being replaced, so we're gonna lose 18.
Yeah, some of it's going to be in a phase. So we've got some dead ones. We've got some oversized one. We're going to be working to do a couple of things here. Number one, make sure the trees are the appropriate size and the canopy is not going to grow bigger than we hope, than we want it to, in order to be able to keep, visibility for the storefronts. The second thing in talking with some of the arborists is it makes sense to do a variety of trees as opposed to all one type of tree. That way, if there happen to be a disease or an illness that comes through, it would only hit maybe certain trees and not wipe out, all the trees, as sometimes happens. And then I think we also need to relocate a couple of them that maybe aren't in the right position. They might be right opposite a storefront door entrance or something that we want to move down, maybe a cinder block or two, or cinder block's not the right word, but a square of concrete or two, and just reposition. So it's pulling some trees. It might be filling in a certain tree well and creating a new one somewhere else, and getting a portion of the trees planted through this turnover process.
And you said there's a phase 2, so there might be more trees added later.
Yeah, so for next year, there's also money requested in the CIP to do the second phase. So we're maybe going to focus more in the heart of Main Street, Pleasant Street, and the downtown loop for this year. And then probably in the other years, move further out into Beacon East and Beacon West and focus in those areas.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Susie. Councilor Haynes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Scott, has there been any discussion about adding, and I know I don't like to spend money needlessly, but to have an item line that an arborist take care of these trees? Because you just can't plunk them in the ground and think everything's happy, because what I'm concerned about is 5 or 7 years out, we're going to be right back to where we are right now.
Yes, I think it would make a lot of sense to have someone come in and monitor the trees, give them the appropriate feedings and that type of stuff, because they obviously we're going to pick trees that will do well in an urban setting, but just when you're putting them in the mix with salt products perhaps and more heat because of the amount of hard surface that's in the area, certain trees, no matter how well suited they are for that, will certainly be a little more challenged if as opposed to growing in ideal conditions. So yes, we want to make the investment and then take care of the investment, and I'll see that we do that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Haynes. Any other questions? Councilor Littman, you had one. Yes, go right ahead.
Scott, just in terms of the history of this, I thought originally, correct me if I'm wrong, that was $500,000 that we backstopped, and after 3 years, we were able to take some laps back in, and this would be the final amount. And I think it was, basically we were acting as sort of a reinsurer to make sure that they could fulfill the contract, and we were able to take back some previously.
You are correct. It was $500,000 commitment that the city made. The truth is, we just didn't have surplus funds to put into the reserve account right out of the gate. And I believe that some of these funds either came from the sale of the fire station, or maybe the sale of the other property that we owned in Lakeport. And that's when we were able to fund. We always were committed that if need be, we would, but it was just a matter of timing that we didn't have $500,000 to get in there in one fell swoop. And when we did, we put in the 300,000.
Okay. So I'll be looking right now for a motion to move to authorize the reallocation of $305,042.39 from the Laconia School District Education Stabilization Reserve Fund to the following accounts: 01-479-306-0001 downtown tree replacement, $56,000. 01-499-479-0033 equipment, $20,000, and 82-401-001-0095 non-capital reserve, $229,042.39. Counselor Felch, seconded by Counselor Susie. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Thank you all very much. Moving along to item number 22 under unfinished business. I'll turn this over to the city manager, or perhaps Wes Anderson, Director of Public Works, in regards to an update on the feasibility of converting from a manual to an automated solid waste curbside collection service.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will start this off unless Wes is under an alias. I don't see him on our Zoom, but maybe he is, and he'll raise his hand if we need him. But this is just a follow-up to a conversation that we had several months back about, did we want to explore, get the information, provide the data, do some research, and present options for you all to discuss and determine what the best path forward is for the city regarding solid waste. We are not asking for any decision tonight. We're merely presenting the information, which is what I would hope and expect you would want of staff, is to go out and research these things and present the information. Whether or not we ultimately have a recommendation to go one way or the other, that'll be your lead. But we want to present the information so that everybody has it. I think Mr. D'Amato's did a great job of outlining some of the key points. I won't spend a lot of time going through this, but basically we went out and asked for automated services. There was nobody in our immediate region, with the exception of Franklin, who was doing automated right now. So any company that was going to bid on it would need to go out and purchase a new automated vehicle, or in our case, 2 automated vehicles, because of one for recycling and one for trash. A little bit of a challenge we have in dealing with these companies is that we only collect our recycling every other week, meaning they make an investment in a brand new vehicle that either they're only using every other week with Laconia, or they need to go find an account somewhere close enough by that they can put this truck to use on the weeks that we're not using it. And there's some challenges there with the company trying to do that. Because Casella was significantly lower in their bid than Waste Management. So I'm just going to focus on the Casella one right now. They were looking to amortize their truck purchases over the life of a 5-year contract. And obviously we know these trucks have a much longer useful life than 5 years, but their concern was coming in, making the investment, having a 5-year contract, and then maybe not being renewed. And now do they have vehicles that they aren't going to be able to use elsewhere? We did ask them to go back and provide numbers on an amortization on a 7-year schedule to see if they were willing to do that. And they didn't want to extend out that far. There's a lot of uncertainties with solid waste, with recycling processing, even down to the state of New Hampshire trying to license and create additional landfill capacity in the space in the state. That's a big battle that's going on up in the North Country right now. And, somewhere down the road, it's possible that New Hampshire solid waste might need to be trucked out of state if there are more landfills that are licensed and built, or additional capacity created in the state. So I think that's probably some of the reason that Casella did not want to. There are not a lot of solid waste players in the state for doing municipal pickup. The third one that I could probably think of that did not bid would be Pinard, and they're typically down in the southern tier of the state. So to wait a couple of years and think that we're going to have 4, 5, 6, 7 bidders come in for our municipal contract is just not the reality. Last time around, I believe these two, Casella and Waste Management, were the only bidders at that time. We have made some projections on what our contract renewal with Casella might be. We're at the end of, I believe, a third year of firm numbers, and we have 2 one-year options that kick in this fall, but those options are not tied to any specific benchmarks or dollars. So in other words, Casella will say, we're willing to extend for X, and we would negotiate the price on that. And if we didn't come to an agreement at that point, we would say we're not going to exercise the option, and we'll go out to bid for manual trash services again and let parties bid on it. Like I just said, I'm not expecting any more than these two, and they've kind of laid out their hand a little bit in is when we looked at the bids on the automated in terms of, running the routes and processing the materials and hauling and those types of things. We've just put in a 4% inflator kind of as a holding place. That is not a firm number, and we would not be surprised to see that number come in significantly higher. Based on where the bids did come in, there was no savings, and we hoped the savings was going to come from an automated route needing only 1 employee on the truck, as opposed to 2, 1 hanging off the back and picking up the bins and emptying them and putting them back down. So the savings did not materialize. And again, I think both of these companies are looking at the trends in solid waste, the trends in processing, recycling cost, and just in this labor market, and what they're paying. And, their numbers are high. So Mr. D'Amatos is absolutely correct. There would be no initial savings, and we would need to go out and purchase the 64-gallon toters for, 1 for each household, for 1 for trash, 1 for recycling, and put it out. But, that's an expense that would be an investment we would make that isn't going to be paid back by savings in a contract right now, at least from the bids that we've received. Knowing that, I believe solid waste is really going to be a thorn in our side, in the coming years, and especially with recycling being a part of that. Again, not asking for any decisions, just putting out options that the council can choose to discuss. But I mean, you could always look to, reduce the services, fees, some sort of a pay as you go, change the service model. I mean, that could mean, 1 collection a week in the weirs as opposed to the 2 that we're doing right now. Having all businesses take care of their own solid waste, as opposed to picking up for certain businesses right now. So a number of things, if and when we want to get there, we can look at, but none of these are recommendations. We're just putting them out there for things that you may want to discuss, or you may simply want to dismiss as saying, no, we're not going to go that route. A couple more challenges with our route. So we also require our successful bidder to come in and pick up the various recycling and waste receptacles that we have along our streets in certain areas of the city. So in the downtown and along the weirs. So that certainly requires, in addition to the automated vehicle, a separate truck to come in and handle those things. And we have some very tight streets, especially out in the weirs, that the large trucks can't get down right now anyway. So in some cases, there needs to be a smaller truck that comes in to do some of the curbside pickup from certain houses where the roads are very undersized for today's large vehicles. So that's the gist of it. I know there's a lot of information there. So I can stop and certainly turn it over to you, Mr. Mayor, and any questions, and we can continue the conversation. But again, we are putting this out there for informational purposes. There's no recommendation. There is no action being requested tonight.
Thanks very much, City Manager. My inclination on this, and I appreciate the work that you have done in your briefing as well. as well as offering some perspective. And I appreciate the work that Wes Anderson put in on this as well. So thank you. I think my recommendation at this point would probably be to refer this to a committee to begin to sort of vet these ideas and work through some of the data that's been provided, and you know, perhaps even go about soliciting input from an ad hoc committee of community citizens who may have an interest on this on either side, just so we can get a very balanced perspective. Clearly, there might be something that's appealing with this option, but I think there are far more questions than answers, but you know that as well as I do. So that would be my recommendation right now. I'd be interested to hear input, thoughts from other counselors as well. Counselor Felch?
Well, another option that I'd be interested in seeing is, what if we went with automated for trash and stayed with manual for the recycling?
Well, I think the question you raise may be a very good one, and that's why I'd push it to a committee to do a little deeper dive and to also welcome ideas like you just presented. Counselor Susie?
Is this not an item for the Public Works Committee? Is that where this falls?
I'm thinking about that. What do you, I think it's squarely within your parameters. What do you think?
I just asked the question.
Yeah, no, I think so.
Councilor Haynes is the chairman.
Thank him later. No, without being, in all seriousness, I was flipping through my sheets. I think it is a Public Works. That's where it starts anyway. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I guess if it's appropriate, Mr. Manager, I would just like to recommend that this be referred to that committee. Should we have a vote on that as well, or can it just be done administratively?
I think you would just make a motion, move to the Public Works, and I think that's the right place. And I think Councilor Cheney's got a big smile because he looked and he realizes he's not on that committee.
I'm going to swap.
Very perceptive.
I'm going to swap with Bruce.
Yeah, no, I heard you volunteering, Councilor Susie, right out of the gate. That's why I was chuckling. But okay, so I would just make a motion that this be referred to Public Works, and perhaps you can work on it throughout the spring and summer and get back to us at some point here with an update. If that's okay.
I'll second that motion.
Further discussion on that?
Was there a first?
Well, I guess maybe
Mayor.
Oh, okay.
We'll let Councilor Cheney be the first on that and Councilor Haynes be the second, and we'll run the vote.
Yes.
And if there's no further discussion, then I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
It was Counselor Haynes as the second. I apologize.
That's okay. Yes.
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 Oh, all right, thank you. Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch,
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes, and that is referred to the Public Works Committee. So I do believe that takes us to the conclusion tonight. I'd like to declare the City Council meeting of April 12th, 2021 adjourned at 8:53 p.m.
Goodbye, all.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Madam